else, but it was a coach from that team. And it's amazing how like these little paths happen in your life that lead you to liking certain players or that lead you to like a certain team. It's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's dope, man. All right, number 2, Rueter.
Number 2 for me. So Captain Foreshadowing, Joseph Coscia, already brought up. I was really scared because, again, we did not do any rehearsal. We didn't do any discussion beforehand. We were just picking duos. So I was very nervous when he said he was going with the Sabres. He ended up going with Hasek and Shatan, great duo. I went with the other tandem that he mentioned in that era, Briere and Drury. So I went Danny Briere and Chris Drury as my number 2. And if for no other reason, because I think as a Sabres fan, as much as I love those Hasek teams and Michael Pekka and, some Curtis Brown, Joe mentioned Curtis Brown, which is really cool because he's one of my favorite grinders of all time. The guy was awesome. Anyone that's a Sabres fan should remember him. But this was a combination that was in the mid-2000s. So it was like 05, 06, and then 06, 07. This was after a lockout, and I remember what was really cool after the lockout was speed became really the most important feature of NHL hockey teams, and the Sabres were not lacking that. It was really awesome to watch Briere and Drury. Neither of them, what I really loved about it is neither of them really lit up the stat sheet all that often, but they were co-captains of the Buffalo Sabres, so they both wore the C, which I thought was really cool. They both were incredibly clutch in game-winning goals and game-tying goals. And for my entire life up until that point, as a fan of the Dolphins, as a fan of the Sabres, as a fan of the Indians, you're just constantly waiting for that other shoe to drop. You're always waiting for, well, how are they going to blow it, right? And this was the first time that one of my teams that I liked was like that team that you could never count out of a game, which was really cool. And you just always thought, down 1, a minute left, no big deal. These two got it. And time after time after time, Briere and Drury would come through. Other great stories about these guys. One of my favorite announcers, if not my favorite announcer of all time, Rick Jeanneret, laid out one of the best sports calls in the history of hockey when he yelled, "These guys are good, scary good." And then there was, "And now do you believe? Now do you believe?" And it was on the backs of guys like Briere and Drury. So just some of my absolute favorite moments came from that team in general. I remember watching with Joe, Brian Campbell absolutely destroyed a player named RJ Umberger on the ice. It's for my money, the best hit that I've ever seen in a hockey game. You watch guys like Vanek, Pominville, Afinogenov, just roll the highlight film for Max Afinogenov. And just some of my best memories watching sports were those mid-2000 Sabres teams. To this day, the only team in Sabres history, if I'm not mistaken, to win the President's Trophy for having the most points scored in the league. And just an absolute pleasure to watch. Some of my absolute favorite memories as a human person watching sports, the Buffalo Sabres in that mid-2000s era, led by my number 2 duo, Danny Briere and Chris Drury.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, the greatest game-tying goal I've ever seen was in the Rangers series. Do you remember this? It was a home game.
The Drury from
oh my God,
from somehow behind the net almost, but along the boards.
Never forget it. We were down by 1 with about 7, maybe 10 seconds to go. The arena was the loudest I've ever heard it. There was people. This was when they started kind of congregating outside the arena, so they had that huge congregation outside the arena, and we're down by 1, and there's a face-off in the Rangers zone, and Lundqvist had been playing out of his mind. And I think at this point I think the series was tied 1-1 or something. We might have even been down 2-1. And this was the second year, not the year we lost to Carolina to go to the Cup. It was the following year. And we won that face-off, and Drury somehow, like he always does, as you mentioned, exactly what you mentioned. Drury was the most clutch goal scorer I think I've ever seen in at least Sabres history. And he scored that goal, and that was by far my favorite hockey moment. And as you said, Rick Jeanneret with that voice and all of his calls, But I just remember that. And then that same game that you were talking about with Brian Campbell lighting up RJ Umberger, that was the game that Danny Briere scored the overtime winner. That was game one of the Phillies series.
Sure was.
The first round of the NHL playoffs. And I remember we were on 20th Street in your old apartment watching that in your living room. And just, good times, great memories there.
We shook the floor jumping up and down on that one. That's for damn sure. Just awesome times. Just incredible duo. Love them to pieces.
Some more hometown Sabres love, man. You gotta love it. Shout out to the Sabres, man. Shout out to the 90s Sabres. All right, number 2 for me. I kind of went back and forth, and I flipped them again, Rueter.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I flipped them again. So number 2. It was my number 1, but I flipped it back down to number 2. This one here is going to be Venus and Serena Williams, the Williams sisters. And I mean, as a duo, because we're talking about duels, right? And this is kind of like just looking back at them. So since they started competing in the duels championships, titles and whatnot, and this is in 98, they competed in 23 doubles championships. All right. They won 22 times out of those 23s. So when you talk about just overall dominance of a sport by two athletes in their sport playing together, they are the most dominant duo ever in any sport. You put them up against any duel in history and 22 titles. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, it's ridiculous. And the fact that it was two sisters on the court, and not just sisters in general, but sisters, like two black women on the court dominating the competition, and like just the only two black women out there. It was a beautiful thing to see. And I really didn't realize it as a kid, because like I remember my mother making me watch those games, and I'll go over my uncles and aunts' houses and we would watch those competitions. And I never understood why until I got older and realized the significance of that. And just kind of looking back on it, man, it's a beautiful thing. What those ladies done in their sport is unmatched. And I don't see any duos competing with that anytime soon. But shout out to those ladies there, man. Shout out to the Williams sisters. Just two phenomenal athletes. And I mean, individually, they dominated tennis as well. So yeah, that's my number two right there.
What a great couple of choices there. Watching those two kind of splash onto the scene, and Venus came out first. A lot of our younger listeners may not realize that Venus came out and took the tennis world by storm first. And then little sister came out, and oh my goodness, did she ever just absolutely take over. I thought, man, nobody's going to beat this Venus Williams. She's amazing. And then sure enough, little sister came out and absolutely dominated. It's really cool choices, man, there. Again, my mind, as soon as we talked about duos, went to team sports, right, where we were talking about, football, basketball, hockey, and the like. But I like where you went to sports entertainment and tennis. It's really outside the box thinking, and these are two great choices. I love it.
And when I had I had the misconception that we were going to do kind of statistically, I had a whole ranking system and everything of how we were going to do these duos. I had Serena and Venus on there as one of the most successful, statistically wise duos in their sport. So that is definitely something that I was looking at with them. So I also think that's a really good pick.
I appreciate it, fellas. Number 1, we are down to 1. Joe, I'm very curious to see your number 1.
It's funny because I kind of joked about this a little bit last week, and you would probably expect me to go. Can I give you some honorable mentions? Is that okay?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay,
let's do it.
Some honorable mentions. I thought the whole Jim Kelly, Andre Reed situation. I was never a big Jim Kelly fan, though. Like, honestly, I know that's kind of terrible as a Bills fan, but I don't know. For some reason, I wasn't a huge Kelly fan. I also thought of Tony Gwynn and Ken Kennedy were two of my favorite baseball players that played, but I ended up going with, and like I said, I kind of joked about this last week, but I was trying to think out of the box for my number 1 and just kind of think of memorable and kind of dominating sports performances and moments that I remember as a kid. And I'm going golf on this one. I'm going Tiger Woods and his caddy Fluff. Remember the caddy Fluff? You're all looking at me like you have no idea what I'm talking about. The walrus Wilford Brimley looking guy, the big mustache, and he was carrying his. I'm going with Tiger Woods and Fluff. I remember that relationship to be one of the big stories on ESPN back in the day, and it's one of my favorite duos. And I was trying to think out of the box. Fluff was his caddy for his first kind of major win, the 97 Masters, which that kind of put Tiger, burst him right onto the scene, where he like shot a 40 on the first nine, and then a ridiculous 30 on the back nine. It was something crazy like that. And Fluff was there, and Tiger has personally said that it was kind of his inspirational talk after the front nine of what got him to shoot that record, that crazy round of 30 on the back nine. Just kind of his motivational and the relationship that they had was really cool. And then, I researched it a little bit because, let's be honest, we don't really keep up on Fluff and what he's doing. Still a caddy to this day, 72 years old, still a caddy, looks incredibly thinner than when he was caddying for Tiger. So he looks excellent. He's actually been Jim Furyk's caddy for like the past 20 something years. So Tiger actually parted ways with him after a couple of years. They won a whole bunch of majors together, and they parted ways. And Fluff said he doesn't really even know why. Like, there wasn't really an explanation, but he has no ill will to him, and they're actually still friends, and they still talk to each other to this day with that relationship. And I just remember Tiger Woods being just one of the pioneers in golf. Golf wasn't a thing. Golf was something that was, my uncle watched it on the TV, and it put me to sleep because it was so damn boring. And it was just such like an old white dude sport,
Yeah.
and no one cared about it. Like, I hated it. And then Tiger came on the scene, and, he kind of had this huge following. And I think a lot of it too is, I think he played at the Lewiston Country Club. I think he played in a tournament up there. So he kind of had some local buzz going on for that. And I just remember him bursting onto the scene in the Masters there and just dominating and playing. Like, he made golf fun. He made golf exciting. Just his attitude, the whole, the fist pump, and, when he makes the putt.
Did we have a Chappelle?
Did you just call it the
I think that was it was
the Howard Dean?
Howard Dean, yeah.
He definitely made the byaw motion.
He did, and I don't know. It got me kind of interested in golf. I don't know if that's like a cool thing
I get you, man. He brought a different energy to it.
He really did,
Young brother out there dominating.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just kind of this prodigy, they show clips of him when he's 3 years old, swinging the fucking golf club and just, chipping in shots from the sand bunkers and shit. And I'm like, what the hell? This guy's got more talent in his pinky finger than I'll ever have in my life. And I guess the only person that I could really duo him up with was the one that I remember him the most with, and that's that Fluff the caddy man. Mike Cowan is his real name, by the way. So sorry, a little disappointing for my number one, but I thought I'd think out of the box a little bit.
That's not disappointing at all, man. You're talking about what, the most dominant golfer that this generation has ever seen. And I'm pretty sure he attributed a lot of that to his caddy. So I respect it 100%, man. That's what's up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ed.
No, I would just definitely say, you said that you made mention of the fact that I made a face when you mentioned that. And it was true because, I'd obviously heard of Fluff, but just Tiger Woods, I had never heard of him before.
Yeah, who's that Tiger guy?
That obscure Tiger Woods I had never heard of, but Fluff. Oh yeah, absolutely. I knew Fluff.
And I read an article about Fluff recently when I was like prepping for things to talk about with Tiger and him. And he said that, in all the events and all the tournaments of golf that he caddied for Tiger never once blamed him for any bad advice that he might have given. And he said that's very common for golfers to do, to kind of take it out on the caddy, because some golfers can admit that they just made a bad shot. Tiger wasn't like that. He was always very humble with him, and and he said he made plenty of mistakes and plenty of wrong calls, but the relationship that they had, the respect for each other, kind of came through there.
Very cool, man. I love it.
Number one
for me, I've got to go with one of my favorite sports teams. Anyone that knows my fanhood knows that I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. One of my absolute sports heroes is Dan Marino.
Dan the man.
But I chose not to include Dan specifically here, but I'm a sucker for the name game. I'm a sucker for duos who have been bestowed a title. And for these two here, I have the Marx brothers. That would be Mark Duper and Mark